entertainment, insights. Don't take life too seriously. Welcome to Brainsky Unleashed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Brainsky Unleashed. I'm joined today by Charles Reed. He is the CEO of GetPayroll.com. As you can see right behind him, there is the logo and the name of the company. He is a current U.S. Tax Court Practitioner, former IRS Advisory Council member, and he wrote the book, The Payroll Book. And so welcome to the program, Charles. I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today.
Thomas, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so you are all about taxes and the IRS and all of that. The one thing I would love to start out with is, why in the world would you get involved in this?
Well, I'm an analytical person, and when I was in college, I found I enjoyed accounting. I'd originally gone for a finance degree and switched over to accounting, and found that tax was just fascinating. It is very arcane knowledge. Not too many people are really familiar with it, and it is just fun. My MBA is basically a master's in taxation. I've got, I don't know how many college hours of tax, many. And it's just, to me, it's a fun environment. It's adversarial, of course. So that lends to my competitive nature. And it's worked out for me over the last 50 years. So,
So in other words, we are talking to someone who is a 50-year veteran of playing within the realm of the tax code as a CPA, as a tax court practitioner, as everything that I've said before. And the interesting thing to me, Charles, is the fact that you still have passion for this. This is fun to you. That's incredible.
It is. No, it is fun. I'll steal a phrase from a lawyer. It's like playing high stakes poker with somebody else's money.
Oh, well, fair enough.
It's fun. I like competition. I like the advocating for my clients. The IRS is a monolith, and I have some Don Quixote in me. I tilt at windmills. So it's fun. It just is.
All right. So with 50 years as a CPA, with the passion that you have, I think a fair question would be, how much has it changed in 50 years?
Oh, it's changed an immense amount, and it hasn't changed at all.
Ooh, I like that. So give me detail on both directions there.
Well, obviously, the government wants your money.
No.
That hasn't changed.
Yes.
It's been that way since the beginning of time. Since there was a civilization, who's ever in charge wants your money. So that hasn't changed. But the laws have changed. The technology has changed. The IRS has changed in some ways. Some of the technology they use was being used when I started and hasn't changed. So, and that's one of their problems. But it's also, you're dealing with people who don't understand how to write laws, with people who are required to interpret and enforce them, and people who want to find ways around them. And those things don't change. So, when the Congress writes a law, and they write very general laws, the IRS then writes the regulations and the interpretations. And then you have hundreds of thousands of CPAs and attorneys trying to find a way around the law. So the basic idea of taxes hasn't changed, but all the rest of it has. When I started out, everything we got for the IRS was in loose leaf binders, from Commerce Clearinghouse, and there was another one, I've forgotten who it was, and somebody had to put all those documents in the loose leaf binders every month as the changes came in. It's all online now. You can look up anything, anytime, from anywhere. And with law libraries are not near as important as they were, though they are still important. I used to do research at the library. I don't do research at the law library anymore. Very, very seldom do I actually go to the books because I can pull up all the cases online.
Okay.
So it makes my job a lot easier.
Okay. So that covers sort of your background and your interaction with it. From, I guess, from a business owner standpoint, is it fair to say that the IRS tax code changes a lot every year?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Every time Congress meets, it changes. Um, it's. I remember one of the courses I took in college. This was back in the 70s. Was gift and estate taxes, and the rewrite of that in 76 basically destroyed everything I'd learned in college in a semester long course. It was just all changed the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Next January 1, a new whole gift and estate code went into effect, and everything I learned was obsolete.
So how does I mean, look, you're a tax court practitioner, right? So you're kind of a step above probably most CPAs. How does an average CPA even keep up?
Well, first of all, you don't keep up on everything.
Okay.
You have to specialize. There's things I don't touch. If you want to talk about intercompany transfer pricing, taxation, I'll send you the one of the big four. And it used to be the big 10. That's another change. I won't even touch it. To do so would be malpractice.
Mhm.
I deal in small businesses and individuals, and mostly now in employment tax, which is where I've specialized. Uh, I'm an expert in employment taxes, and
Okay.
that's where I practice. So you can't do everything. So you have to specialize, and you keep up on the area uh, of the IRS that interests you. You get the newsletters, you get the trades, you get the cases, and that's what you keep up on. You can't keep up on everything; it's impossible.
So if you're unable to do everything and you've got to specialize, um, are there CPAs out there that you're aware of that generally just try and be that one-stop shop, or do most of them actually specialize?
I don't know of anybody that wants to do everything for everybody.
Because
It's
they can't.
literally impossible. They can't.
They can't.
Uh,
Okay.
Now the big firms, well, they have somebody that does everything,
Mhm.
but they have hundreds or thousands of CPAs on staff. So this guy specializes in this, and if you've got an estate problem, that's the guy. If you've got an individual problem, that's the guy. If you've got employment tax, that's the guy, and so on and so forth.
Brainsky Unleashed is powered by ProfitMax. Did you know that 93% of businesses overpay on their taxes? Do you pay too much in taxes? A recent study showed that businesses are overpaying between 34 and 71%. ProfitMax has proven, legal tax strategy solutions to reduce your tax burden. I'm not only a client, but I even joined the team to help other business owners just like me pay only their fair share and nothing more. Go to profitmax.co. That's profitmax.co. Profitmax.co to find out more. You can even connect with me there, as you should. And I'll help make sure that your tax bill is legally as low as allowed. ProfitMax. Keep your cash. All right. One thing that I've come to understand from this end of the business, and I'm not a CPA, so I want to be very clear to everyone, my audience. But my understanding is that because there's so many changes, it's extremely hard to keep up with them, even sometimes if you're specialized. Uh, as as a CEO of GetPayroll.com, as a CPA, as a U.S. tax court practitioner, would you advise small businesses to make sure that they are working with not just simply one CPA, but working with people who specialize? Or is it, I mean, it's almost scary as a business owner, because I'm also a business owner, to think that, oh my gosh, what do I have to have, like 5 CPAs?
No, for small business, I recommend a single CPA that understands your business
Mhm.
and that you trust and that has performed for you, but one that will say, hey, this is outside of my expertise. Let me call my ex partner. Let me call my friend. Let me call so and so, and I'll get back to you
Okay.
because I don't know it well enough. If they're unwilling to do that, then you probably need to look at somebody who is willing to understand that they are not competent in everything. But most small businesses operate in a relatively narrow range.
Mm.
of the tax code. And sometimes it's very specialized, whether it be, if you're exporting, you've got other things to worry about. If you're importing, if you're in high tech, if you do government work, contract work, there's a lot of areas, but once you're in that, that's probably what you're in. And your CPA should be familiar with those. If you move to another area and he's not, well, then you may need a second one. But I don't recommend that unless there's a real need for it. But I do recommend a CPA that acts as an advisor and knows what his level of competency is and when to call in outsiders.
So it may technically be somewhat of a red flag to look for if the CPA never gives you I don't know. I got to call something in if it's anything complicated.
Yeah,
So,
I would say that's a fair assessment. I get called in all the time as a U.S. tax court practitioner because CPAs are not attorneys and they don't practice in tax court the way I do. So I get called in to take cases to tax court on a regular basis because that's an expertise that I have. I would not need to. However, if I need one that needs to go to district court, I have attorneys that I send them to. I don't do district court. I'm not licensed to practice in federal district court. I'm licensed to practice and have a bar card in the U.S. tax court.
okay. So something that I tend to preach about a lot on my podcast and even through some of the social media reels that I've produced is just the general concept of, we have general practitioners as our doctors, right? And so if you go to your doctor, you go to your general doctor, and the doctor goes, "Geez, you know what? We just did a blood test on you, and there may be a problem. Let's say it could be cancer. Let's say it could be something worse. God forbid, of course." The smart move is going to be, I need to get a second opinion, or I've got to go see a specialist to make sure. But I think what happens is small businesses just get in a habit, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm okay with it. I can handle it. But I think small businesses get into a habit of, well, I like my CPA, I trust my CPA, and they never go for a second opinion. Is it smart to go for a second opinion?
At times, absolutely. Just like medicine, there are times that your CPA will overestimate his own competence, will indicate to you that he has some doubts, indicate to you that he doesn't have experience in that, and you need to go backstop him if he won't with somebody who can provide you with the requisite expertise for your particular problem and situation. Absolutely.
Okay. Um, Again, we talked a little bit before the podcast recording, and as I'm sure my audience knows very well, I get very deeply involved in tax planning, tax strategies, things like that. Should, in your opinion, what is the true benefit to working with either a firm that does that or focuses on that, or working with a CPA that focuses on that more as a specialty versus your main, end of year tax filing CPA? Is there a benefit to that you can see?
There can be. It depends upon the complexity of your situation. But if you have a competent CPA that does tax planning with you, he understands your business and you, and can help make suggestions and offer alternatives structured to you that an outsider that hasn't worked with you for a number of years might not find, might not be comfortable proposing, whatever. Your CPA knows your brother-in-law is in the contracting business. So we could do this with him to structure your business to solve this problem. Well, an outsider won't know that.
Right.
So there are advantages to using a specialist in tax planning, and there's advantages to using someone who knows your business and you intimately.
So if you were to blend the two together, you're probably now looking at the best case scenario.
Oh, absolutely. You want a CPA that will sit down with you outside of tax season when he's absolutely crushed with work and getting returns out, and sit down and talk about the business, your plans, your retirement, succession planning, all these things. And for those things that he's not an expert at, he doesn't write wills. Okay. You need an attorney. Okay. But he can send you to one, hopefully, that does that, or you can find one. He can work with him to integrate the business plan with your retirement and succession planning. The CPA, and to be honest, some of them are simply number crunchers. They're not thinkers. They're analytical. They do tax returns, and that's what they do. You bring them the numbers, and they crunch you out a return. That's not what a small businessman needs. A small businessman needs an advisor, a consultant, to help him better do things that he doesn't know how to do, things he doesn't know. On the other hand, and this is true, and I've seen it with CPAs and particularly with attorneys, is don't let them tell you how to run your business. It's still your business. You have to make the decisions. Take their advice, take their suggestions, their knowledge, their expertise, and integrate it with your business plans, and then make your decisions. Don't let them tell you what to do.
See, to me, I agree with every single thing you've said. It is to me that is rock solid advice for any small business owner. Unfortunately, I think a lot of them make the mistake of they may be perfectly comfortable with their CPA who is a number cruncher, but they may not know that that person is a number cruncher. So, when I talk to small business owners, one of the things that I will ask, when they tell me, oh, I've got the greatest CPA that the world ever saw. Do they meet with you outside of tax season? Do they talk to you? Do you have multiple meetings a year? Do they ask you, what are you doing the next 3 years, next 5 years? And usually when the answer to that is no, that's when I would normally come through and say, do you want to get a second opinion? I mean, because that to me is more of a red flag than anything else.
Absolutely.
So you agree with that? Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit. And as the light is right in my face, perfect timing for this, by the way. Yes, the joys of professional podcasting. I'm good. Let's talk a little bit now about getpayroll.com. So you created getpayroll.com?
Yeah, we started the payroll operation more than 30 years ago.
Okay.
I sold off the accounting practice and tax practice, the individual tax practice, about 10, 12 years ago to my partner, and focused on payroll. So that's all Get Payroll does, is payroll and payroll related things and employment taxes and those problems that are involved with the payroll side of things. Payroll, HR, payment. There's a whole lot of things involved in payroll. 75% of all U.S. revenue, tax revenue, flows through the payroll system.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money there and a lot of things going on. Enough that I felt I could no longer do individual and corporate taxes and employment taxes both.
Yeah.
I felt I had to specialize at that point.
So with Get Payroll, is this a full solution? And when I ask that, I know that you have, services like, I'm sure they're for your competitors like Paychex or ADP. Do you go to the length of, even if it's the local cities, counties, township taxes, to make sure everything is, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted? Is that part of the service that you offer?
Oh, you mean like Philadelphia school tax?
Yes,
And
something like that.
Aurora, Colorado local tax,
Yeah.
Kansas City and Indianapolis and New York City. Yes, we do
Okay.
all that. Probably
Yeah.
the only thing we don't do that our major competitors do is attempt to push you into a PEO, which we don't believe in.
PEOs are not. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of PEOs either.
They're way too expensive.
Yes. Yes.
I have never talked to somebody in a PEO where we couldn't save them at least $1,000 per employee per year.
So
Minimum.
why should anyone choose to work with Get Payroll versus some of the bigger names?
Well, first of all, you get to talk to a CPA and a U.S. Tax Court Practitioner. If you're with one of the majors and you say, hey, I need a CPA to help me with this, they'll tell you to talk to your CPA. Well, if your CPA was a payroll tax expert, he'd be doing your payroll already.
Right.
So it's outside of his area of expertise. So they're telling you to talk to somebody who's not an expert. Now, ADP has a whole floor full of CPAs, but they're all doing corporate work. They're not doing work for the clients. You can't talk to one of them. And they're not payroll experts anyway. They're corporate tax experts.
Right.
So our unique selling proposition is compliance. That's why I became a U.S. Tax Court Practitioner. That's why I went on the IRS Advisory Council to learn more about the internal workings of the service and meet people. And it's been very, very useful to me. These are all things I do for my clients to provide a higher level of compliance than my competitors do. And that's, as far as producing paychecks and paying your people, they all do a reasonably good job or they'd be out of business. I'm not arguing that at all. We don't produce a higher quality paycheck. Our direct deposit isn't faster or better or more secure. But when there's a problem, and the IRS makes millions of mistakes every year. In 19, prior to COVID, they issued $13 billion in employment tax penalties. Billions of which got abated by people like me who knew what they were doing. But we get calls all the time from people who use competitors that can't get help solving a problem because they're not CPAs. They don't take a Form 2848 limited power of attorney, which I take on every client we take on, which allows me to advocate for my clients with the IRS and talk to them directly. I also get copies of all correspondence in the tax areas that we agree to with our clients from the IRS. So there's no surprises. We get clients that'll take a letter from the IRS and just stick it up on the shelf and never look at it. They don't want to. We get a copy. We solve the problem.
This is so important. I can tell you that even one of my own companies, we recently this past year, it was recommended that we went with Paychex through our CPA. Our CPAs stopped doing payroll because payroll is not. It's not for everybody as far as accounting firms. Not everyone, it's not necessarily good money for most firms. They don't want to be part of it. And so we went on a hunt and, we called around. I apologize to you personally. I probably should have gone with you guys because what happened was we ended up going with Paychex and questions started coming up. And so my wife, who is, she's in charge of the books for the company, we're laying in bed. By the way, this is what small business owners do. Most people do not recognize this. They think that, maybe small business owners are, rich people and they live in the fat cat life. It's not true. We literally will lay in bed on a freaking Saturday or Sunday morning and talk about boring stuff like payroll.
God.
And it's miserable. This is the joy of business ownership, by the way. Look at me. I'm going bald.
Yeah, I understand that one.
Yeah. And so the conversation goes, we've been with Paychex now for about 4 months. Is it our CPA or is it Paychex? Who's actually submitting our local tax filings and I know it's being paid, but is everything being filed? Who's doing it? I don't even know. And that to me is crazy. So as you're speaking, I'm sitting here thinking, if you're a small business owner and you can't answer that question, there's a high probability that you got to get your eyes on this before it's too late. I know I'm one of them. But this is so important. And thank you so much for bringing this up because it's that compliance side that it's so much more than just the service itself. The service itself is one thing. The service itself is, we're going to get paychecks paid. But making sure it's right, well, that's a completely different ballgame. And I can tell you out of personal experience at Paychex, I'm not bashing them. I'm not going to bash them on my podcast. But man, if I would have had a phone number for someone like you to answer that simple question and help us sleep at night or have been ahead of that, then that conversation would have led to another stressful conversation related to the business, I'm sure, in some other way.
Thomas, 972-353-0000. Ask for Charles.
Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's standing behind your product. Charles, thank you so much for joining the program today. I really appreciate the insight that you provided. I want to make sure that anyone within the sound of your voice can get that number. So why don't you repeat that number one more time?
972-353-0000. Punch 1 for payroll and ask for Charles.
That is www.getpayroll.com, www.getpayroll.com, getpayroll.com. That is now 3 times. And technically speaking, if you've said something 3 times on any sort of marketing, that means that the listener has to have retained it. So that is getpayroll.com. I just made sure that they know that. Thank you so much for joining the program, Charles.
My pleasure, Thomas.